You're standing in the middle of an ordinary day, the kind of day where everything feels a little scattered, keys lost, emails unanswered, plans shifting without warning. You sigh, thinking it's just another case of bad timing. But then something strange happens. A message arrives. A song plays with lyrics that echo a thought you just had. A stranger says something that answers a question you never voiced. And for a moment, something flickers recognition. Perhaps a feeling that beneath the chaos, there might be a pattern, a whisper that maybe nothing is random. You pause. How many moments like this have slipped past you, chalked up to coincidence? The familiar hum of logic always steps in quickly. That's just life. Don't read into it. But something deeper resists. Something quiet inside you wants to believe these moments carry meaning. Maybe they do. Maybe you've been taught to dismiss the very clues that were meant to guide you home. Carl Jung called this kind of alignment synchronicity when outer events mysteriously coincide with your inner world. Not because you planned it, not because you controlled it, but because something within you called it in. You begin to see the faint outline of this possibility that your life is a tapestry being woven from threads you didn't know you were holding. And those knots, those twists in the fabric. They might not be mistakes, they might be messages. There's a question pulsing at the back of your mind now. What if every interruption is an invitation? You think back, did that delay save you from something worse? Did that heartbreak lead to a deeper version of you? What if the so-called wrong turns were never wrong at all? You remember the moments when everything felt like it was falling apart, when it seemed like life was punishing you, stripping you of what you thought you needed. And yet, here you are, somehow still breathing, somehow wiser. Maybe that was the plan all along. Maybe the pain wasn't punishment, it was preparation. You glance inward. There's resistance. A part of you still clings to logic, to predictability. You want answers you can touch, label, store in a tidy box. But the soul doesn't speak in straight lines. It speaks in symbols. It speaks in echoes. It speaks through the very things you've learned to overlook. And so, you start to watch more closely. You start to listen, not with your ears, but with your inner sense. The way a dream lingers after waking. The way a person's name comes up 3 times in one day. The way the right book somehow lands in your hands at the exact moment you need its words. Is it coincidence, or is it conversation? You begin to wonder if life is trying to speak to me. What is it saying? The question opens a door, and something shifts. You're no longer just reacting, you're receiving. You stop trying to control the sequence and start trusting the symmetry. The unexpected no longer feels like an interruption. It feels like a nudge. You feel the tension loosen in your chest. The part of you that always tried to make sense of everything, it sighs, just a little. You don't need all the answers today. You only need to stay curious, to stay open, to consider the possibility that behind the randomness, there's a rhythm. And maybe, just maybe, you've been dancing to it all along without even knowing. So you ask yourself now, what part of me is ready to believe that nothing is a coincidence? There's no need to rush to the answer. The question itself is enough to begin the unfolding. And with that, the next moment arrives not by accident, but perfectly on time. You think back to a moment, a quiet one. Maybe you were walking through a bookstore or scrolling absent-mindedly late at night. And then there it was, a phrase, a quote, a passage that stopped you. You read it again, heart slowing, because it didn't feel random. It felt like it was meant for you, like it found you. And in that space between the words and your reaction, you sensed something ancient synchronicity, whispering through the silence. There's a difference between a coincidence and a message. You're starting to feel it. Coincidence feels hollow, like an accident with no echo. But this feels personal, as if life is layering its meaning over your own, creating a double exposure of significance and chance. You don't always understand it in the moment, but something inside you stirs. You feel seen. Carl Jung believed that these moments when the outer world mirrors your inner state aren't accidental. They're how the unconscious speaks to the conscious. They're invitations to awaken, to feel again, to remember that something larger is at work. You notice now how often the universe speaks softly. It doesn't shout. It doesn't crash through the door. It leaves breadcrumbs, and when you're quiet enough, or desperate enough, or cracked open just enough, you follow them. You recall a time when you were on the edge, heartbroken, uncertain, praying for direction. And then a phone call came, or a line in a film struck you so deeply you cried without knowing why. That wasn't noise. That was timing. That was the universe putting its hand on your shoulder, gently saying, "This way." Of course, your mind fights it. You were taught to worship logic, to bow to the god of probability. You were trained to believe that silence means emptiness. But what if silence means something else entirely? What if silence is a space where the soul breathes, where synchronicity lives? You sit with this, and something begins to surface. Maybe you've ignored the whispers because they didn't come with proof. They didn't come with guarantees. They just came with a feeling. But now, you start to question your old requirement for certainty. Was it ever really serving you, or was it shielding you from seeing the deeper rhythm beneath your life? You begin to understand synchronicity isn't about control. It's about connection. Not everything will make sense. Not everything is meant to be understood intellectually. Some things are meant to be felt, trusted, honored. And you ask yourself now, when was the last time you followed something just because it felt right? No reason, no logic, just a quiet sense of yes. That kind of trust, it's rare, but it's sacred, because it means you've chosen to believe that you're in conversation with life, not abandoned by it. And something else emerges. Maybe the signs have always been there, but you were too loud inside to hear them. The overthinking, the constant busyness, the fear. You were drowning out your own guidance. But silence creates space. It creates invitation. It's where the threads come together, softly, like morning fog, lifting to reveal the path beneath. You breathe deeper now, not because everything is clear, but because something in you is awakening. A part of you that remembers not everything true needs explanation. Not everything meaningful needs to be proven. Some truths are felt, known, lived. You no longer demand thunderclaps. You no longer wait for certainty to believe. A whisper is enough. A feeling is enough. A symbol, a song, a stranger's kindness. It's all enough. Because you're starting to listen. And so, the question blooms in you again. What are the silent signs trying to say right now, not yesterday, not next week, but in this very breath? You don't need to rush to answer. All you need to do is feel. Let the whisper move through you. Let the silence speak. Let synchronicity remind you that even in the stillness, you are never truly alone. You think of someone who walked into your life at just the right or wrong time. Maybe it was a brief encounter, or maybe they stayed long enough to shape the way you see yourself. At first, you believed it was chance, but the more you reflect, the more you sense a deeper symmetry in their arrival. They didn't just appear, they revealed something about you, about your longing, about your shadow. It wasn't coincidence, it was a mirror. Have you ever met someone who made you feel strangely seen, not because they knew your story, but because they touched something unspoken within you, as if their presence awakened a forgotten memory, or stirred a buried emotion? This isn't fantasy, this is resonance. When two souls cross paths in a precise, meaningful moment. The meeting is rarely random. It's often orchestrated by something within you, calling for reflection. Carl Jung taught that we project unconscious aspects of ourselves onto others. This means that when someone affects us deeply, whether through love, admiration, irritation, or grief, they're often reflecting a part of us we haven't yet met. The other becomes our mirror. The connection becomes a kind of message. You begin to ask, why did I attract that person? Why them? And why then? These questions lead not to blame, but to understanding. That friend who hurt you may have mirrored your fear of abandonment. That partner who felt too intense may have stirred your hunger for passion and your fear of being consumed by it. The people you meet are not just characters in your story. Sometimes, they are the story. You see now that synchronicity doesn't always arrive as gentle poetry. Sometimes it arrives as confrontation, as heartbreak, as the exact person you wish had never entered your life, but whose presence changed everything. there is meaning in that too. Because even pain can be a mirror, even loss can be a teacher. You think of a relationship that cracked you open, one that made you feel more alive, more vulnerable, more confused than ever before. You thought they were your answer, but maybe they were your reflection. Maybe they showed you your own capacity to love, your own patterns of fear, your own inner hunger for wholeness. And when they left, it wasn't just grief. You felt it was the loss of the part of you they awakened. There's tenderness in this realization. You soften. You stop blaming them for not staying. You start thanking them for arriving, because they arrived exactly when you needed to see yourself clearly, painfully, beautifully. And now, you carry them not as wounds, but as mirrors, each one revealing a piece of your own becoming. You begin to understand the soul doesn't attract what it wants. It attracts what it needs for growth. And when you start seeing others as reflections, your entire perspective shifts. That difficult boss, a mirror for your hidden insecurities, that endlessly kind stranger, a reflection of your untapped compassion, that romantic partner who made you question everything, a guide into the deeper layers of your psyche. And so, you start asking a new question when people enter your life. What part of me are you showing me? Not from ego, not from blame, but from wonder. You feel something change. The resentment starts to dissolve. The story becomes richer. The connections more sacred. Even brief encounters carry meaning. A passing conversation, a shared glance, a name you hear again and again. These are not accidents. These are synchronicities in human form. You realize now that healing doesn't always happen in solitude. Often, it happens through others, through connection, through the friction and the flow. Because every encounter is an invitation to see yourself more fully, to reclaim the pieces you've disowned, to integrate what you've feared. And so, when the next person arrives, whoever they may be, you greet them differently. You ask not, "What do you want from me?" but "What do you reveal in me?" The mirror never lies. It only reflects what you are ready to see. You remember a time when something fell apart, a plan unraveled, a job was lost, a relationship collapsed in your hands no matter how tightly you tried to hold it. You called it bad luck, bad timing, maybe even fate punishing you. But now, from a quieter place inside, you start to see the event through different eyes, not as a punishment, but as a portal, not random, but necessary. Because hidden behind that collapse was something you'd been avoiding for years, your shadow. Jung said that the shadow is the part of the psyche you disown the traits, the emotions, the memories you repress, because they don't fit your idea of who you're supposed to be. And yet, the more you deny the shadow, the louder it becomes. It doesn't disappear. It disguises itself in your fears, in your triggers, in the moments when life suddenly turns, seemingly without warning. You think about that argument you regret, or the opportunity that slipped through your fingers because you hesitated. You thought those moments came from outside you, but what if they rose from within you? What if that painful event was orchestrated, on some unconscious level, to reveal the part of you you've refused to see? That breakup that shattered you, was it truly about the other person? Or did it finally expose the part of you that doesn't feel worthy of love? That lost promotion, was it just chance? Or did it force you to confront the fear of being seen? The shadow shows up exactly where it hurts, because that's where you've been numb. And so, the question becomes, what part of me was I not willing to face until this happened? You sit with this question, and it hurts, because now the dots begin to connect. The patterns repeat, not because life is cruel, but because the lesson hasn't been fully lived. The same types of people, the same rejections, the same anxiety. It isn't coincidence. It's choreography, a dance between your conscious self and the parts you've buried. You remember feeling like the universe had it out for you, like everything kept going wrong. But maybe, just maybe, the universe wasn't punishing you. It was showing you where you were still at war with yourself. This is not easy to accept. The mind resists. It wants to find someone to blame. It wants to name villains and victims. But the soul is braver than that. The soul whispers, no one is against you, not even you. But you must stop hiding from yourself. There's a crack in the narrative now. And through that crack, light comes in. You begin to see how every unwanted moment held a deeper invitation, not to suffer, but to see, to witness the parts of you that learned to hide, to shrink, to armor up. The shadow isn't evil, it's exiled. It waits in the wings of your life until the perfect moment to reappear. And those moments, they always look like coincidence, like misfortune, like chaos. But if you look closer, they are mirrors too. Mirrors shaped like disruption, like endings, like being brought to your knees. There's a strange peace in this realization. Not comfort, exactly, but clarity. You no longer see yourself as a victim of random hardship. You begin to see yourself as a participant in your own becoming, and that shift changes everything. Now, when life twists without warning, you ask, what am I being asked to reclaim? Maybe it's your anger, maybe it's your grief, maybe it's your power. These are not easy gifts, but they are essential ones, and the shadow doesn't give them back freely. It waits until you're ready, until you're strong enough to face what once scared you. And when you do, the world shifts. The same patterns stop repeating. The same coincidences stop being painful. Because now, you see through them, you understand their purpose, and you walk forward with new eyes. You are not cursed. You are not broken. You are awakening. There's a quiet voice inside you. Always has been. You've heard it during still moments, when the noise dies down and something beneath the surface stirs. It's subtle, never demanding, never loud, just a soft knowing, a tug in the gut, a whisper in the chest. And yet, how often have you brushed it aside? You call it a hunch, a gut feeling, a passing intuition. You don't have the facts to back it up, so you doubt it. You choose reason over instinct. And then later, when things go wrong, you hear yourself say, I knew it. You didn't lack insight, you lacked trust. The voice had spoken. You just weren't ready to listen. Jung believed that the unconscious tries to speak through symbols, dreams, and impulses that don't always make sense to the rational mind, but those inner stirrings. They're not random. They are the soul's compass. And when you ignore that compass, life begins to redirect you, often through synchronicities too loud to overlook. You think back to a time when everything felt wrong, even though it looked fine on the outside. Maybe it was a job, a relationship, a commitment you couldn't explain your unease about. People told you it was a great opportunity, but something in you shrank every time you stepped into it. That something, it was your truth. And ignoring it didn't silence it, it just delayed its eruption. Eventually, the universe stepped in, a chance event, a sudden cancellation, a random encounter that changed your trajectory. From the outside, it looked like coincidence. From the inside, it felt like grace, because when you won't make the move, life often makes it for you. You begin to wonder, what if the events that rerouted me were simply life, honoring the truth I was too afraid to act on? It's humbling, realizing that your soul has been working behind the scenes all along, guiding, nudging, rearranging the pieces, not with cruelty, but with deep, patient love. And now, you're learning to tune in, not just to events, but to yourself. You begin paying attention to the subtle, how your body reacts when someone speaks, the surge of energy when you say yes to the right thing, the contraction in your chest when something's not aligned. These aren't coincidences, they're communications. You start to hear the whisper more clearly. Go there, turn here, leave now, stay still. Sometimes it says, this isn't for you, even when everyone else says it is. Other times, it says, leap, even when the world says, stay. And the more you listen, the more the outer world begins to match the inner one. Synchronicity becomes more frequent. Events unfold with unexpected elegance. Life starts to feel orchestrated. You realize now that intuition isn't magic. It's memory, the soul remembering something the mind hasn't caught up to yet. You've been trained to overlook it, to dismiss the irrational. But now you ask yourself, what might change if I finally trusted the voice I've been ignoring? Maybe you'd stop asking for signs and start becoming the sign. Maybe you'd stop second-guessing and start aligning, not with the world's expectations, but with your inner truth. You feel that truth rising in you now. It's not loud. It doesn't need to be. It's steady. Sure, like a river finding its course again after a long detour. And you realize the more you listen to yourself, the more the world begins to listen to you. The right people appear, the right doors open, and it no longer feels like you're forcing life. It feels like you're flowing with it. You exhale, not because everything is certain, but because you've found the courage to trust the uncertain. And as you stand here now, you wonder, what would happen if I gave that quiet voice the microphone today? Let that question guide you. You've begun to notice a strange repetition in your life. The same storylines play out with different people. The same conflicts arise, no matter where you go. It's like you're walking through a dream that keeps resetting, with new faces but the same script. And at first, you blame the world, bad luck, bad timing, bad people. But then something deeper dawns on you. Maybe it's not about them. Maybe it's about the archetype beneath them. Carl Jung believed that archetypes are ancient. Universal patterns living in our unconscious minds, forms that shape how we experience the world. They're not just characters in myths and stories, they're forces within us, attracting what we most need to integrate. And so, the same lessons return, over and over again, wearing different costumes until you finally see them for what they are. That friend who always takes and never gives, they carry the archetype of the saboteur, teaching you where you still lack boundaries. The lover who seems to disappear just when you open your heart, they may be the trickster, revealing your fear of vulnerability. The mentor who walks into your life when you're lost, that's the wise old man or woman, answering a call you didn't know you'd made. These figures don't arrive by accident. They arrive when the psyche is ready to grow. You begin to ask, what role have I unconsciously invited into my life again and again, and why? Suddenly, your past isn't a collection of random encounters. It's a myth unfolding in real time. You're not just living, you're living a story as old as humanity, and your soul is its hidden author. You realize now that synchronicity often wears the face of the archetype. It steps into your life at the exact moment you're ready to wrestle with it, to dance with it, to integrate what it came to reveal. And with this understanding comes compassion for yourself, for others, for the roles you've played and the ones you've cast without realizing it. You see now that those painful relationships weren't curses, they were initiations. The archetype teaches through repetition, until you claim your worth. The victim archetype will keep drawing in people who disregard you, until you speak your truth. The shadow will send you liars. But once you awaken to the pattern, it begins to dissolve. You're no longer trapped in the script, you're rewriting it. You feel that shift now. Something opens in your chest, a sense of wonder. Even in the hard moments, even in the heartbreaks, something sacred has always been at work. Behind each difficult encounter, there was meaning. And behind that meaning, there was a deeper version of you trying to emerge. You start to play with the idea, what if my life is a myth? And I'm the hero being shaped by these characters, not in a grandiose way, but in a deeply human way. You're not here to be perfect, you're here to be whole. And wholeness comes from meeting every part of yourself, especially the ones you project onto others. That annoying colleague. What part of you do they reflect? That charming, unreachable crush. What yearning inside you do they embody? That ex who broke your heart. What part of you still believes you're not enough? These aren't just people, they are invitations. Each one asking you to come closer, not to them, but to yourself. And so, you begin to bow to the pattern, not in defeat, but in reverence. You no longer curse the recurrence. You greet it like an old teacher. Ah, it's you again, you whisper. What are you here to show me this time? In that moment, you stop being a passive character in your own life. You become the meaning maker. You become the one who sees through the disguise. The world is full of symbols, full of faces wearing masks. And now, your vision is clearer. You no longer seek escape. You seek integration. You want to meet every archetype, every wound, every mirror, so you can finally return to yourself, whole and awake. Because the moment you recognize the pattern is the moment you can choose a different way to respond. And with that knowing, the question becomes, what pattern is ready to end in me, and what truth is ready to begin? You don't need to answer it now. Just Let it echo. Let it lead you toward a new chapter one where you walk not in circles, but in spirals, always returning to yourself, but never the same. There was a time you asked, why is this happening to me? You were hurt, blindsided, confused. Life felt cruel and unexplainable, like a storm without warning. But something changed when you began to ask a different question. What is this trying to teach me? And in that single shift, the chaos began to unravel into clarity, not all at once, but slowly, gently, like fog, lifting just enough for you to see the next step. The events of your life didn't change, but your lens did. That's the moment you began to move from reaction to reflection, from victim to meaning maker, from confusion to choice. Synchronicity thrives in this space, where you are willing to see with new eyes. It's not about forcing a silver lining onto pain. It's about being willing to ask if this isn't punishment. What could it be pointing me towards you? You look back at something you thought had ruined you. Maybe a betrayal, a loss, a dream that died too soon. And yet, if you're honest, would you be who you are now without it? Would you have learned what you now carry with such depth and softness? The cost was great, but so was the transformation. That's not coincidence. That's a deeper order at work, one that reshapes even the ugliest endings into beginnings in disguise. This doesn't mean you bypass the pain. It means you begin to hold it differently, with reverence, not resistance, with curiosity, not control. And here's what you discover: the universe responds to your willingness. When you open your heart to meaning, meaning begins to meet you everywhere, in street signs, in overheard conversations, in dreams and déjà vu and songs on the radio that say exactly what you needed to hear. It's not superstition, it's alignment. It's tuning your inner frequency so you can hear what's always been playing. The more you ask, what's the lesson here, the more life answers. You see now that life isn't random, it's responsive. It mirrors back what you're ready to know, if you expect only chaos. That's what you'll see. But if you start expecting meaning, even in small ways, life begins to bloom with it. You start to notice the moments that feel like gentle choreography, how the right person calls when you are about to give up, how something delays you just long enough to avoid a problem, how an old wound resurfaces, not to hurt you again, but to finally be healed, not accidents initiations. And when things don't go as planned, you don't collapse. You ask, what if this is a redirection, not a rejection? What if this is grace, not punishment? That question doesn't erase disappointment, but it gives it room to transform. You begin to live with a kind of sacred watchfulness, a soft gaze toward your life, noticing how everything connects. And in that noticing, your posture changes. You're no longer the one being pushed around by fate. You're the one participating in your becoming. Carl Jung wrote that we don't become enlightened by imagining light, but by making the darkness conscious. That includes making the random conscious, seeing the symbolic in the seemingly insignificant, choosing to ask deeper questions in ordinary moments. And maybe that's what transformation really is: not a thunderbolt, but a shift in how you see, a choice to lean in instead of turn away, a willingness to believe that meaning isn't rare, it's everywhere, it's just waiting for your attention. So now, when life stirs, you pause. Not to analyze, but to ask, what if this is sacred? What if the traffic jam is protecting you? What if the silence from someone is creating space for your voice? What if the delayed dream is timing itself perfectly so it arrives when you're truly ready? Not everything will make sense right away, but you've learned to befriend the unknown, to walk with questions instead of demanding answers, and in that quiet trust, you find a new kind of power. You are not here to suffer meaninglessly. You are here to see, and in your seeing, to awaken. So you return to that question, the one that changed everything. What is this teaching me? Let it be your compass now. Let it open your eyes in ways that facts never could. Because the moment you choose to see differently, everything begins to rearrange itself around that choice. You start to notice how your relationships don't just reflect your patterns, they reveal your polarities. The tension between opposites inside you plays out through every connection you form. You feel drawn to people who carry something you long for, something you lack, something hidden within you, waiting to be reclaimed. Jung called this inner polarity the anima, and animus the feminine and masculine forces within each of us, regardless of gender. These energies are not about biology. They are about soul, about balance, about the longing for inner wholeness. And through synchronicity, life sends you people who awaken these forces, sometimes gently, sometimes violently. You think of the person who made you feel alive, who lit a fire inside you that you didn't know was there. Maybe they were unlike anyone you'd ever met, or maybe they felt eerily familiar, as if you'd known them long before this life. Their presence didn't just stir desire, it stirred memory, longing, reflection. They represented something you had forgotten in yourself. This isn't romantic fantasy. This is symbolic truth. The anima, the inner feminine, often appears through the women or feminine energy you're drawn to, awakening your capacity to feel, to nurture, to surrender. The animus, the inner masculine, may show up through men or masculine energy calling you into strength, direction, presence. And sometimes, the person who awakens these polarities does not stay. Sometimes, they arrive only to ignite what's dormant. Their role is not permanence. Their role is initiation. You begin to understand that relationship wasn't meant to last, it was meant to awaken. You revisit the people you've loved, the ones who broke you open, not to grieve again, but to reflect. What part of you did they carry? Were they a mirror of your softness, your power, your wildness, your stillness? Did they lead you closer to your inner masculine or your inner feminine? Suddenly, these connections are no longer random, they are sacred echoes. The timing of their arrival, the intensity of their presence, even their absence, none of it was accidental. Each was an orchestrated moment in your journey toward inner integration. You may have mistaken attraction for destiny, but what you felt was deeper than chemistry. It was recognition, your soul recognizing a symbol of its own becoming. Of course, the mind wants clarity. It wants labels: twin flame, soulmate, karmic partner. But the soul doesn't speak in categories. It speaks in archetypes. And every time you fall for someone, or feel repelled by someone, or can't forget someone you're dancing with, one of these inner energies, projected outward. This doesn't diminish the connection. It deepens it. It reminds you that every relationship, no matter how fleeting, is part of your inner dialogue, an invitation to reclaim what you've abandoned inside. And so you ask, what energy in me are they reflecting back? What do I admire in them that I have not yet lived in myself? You feel the layers peel away. You realize that what you chase in others, you are seeking in yourself, that what irritates you in them may be a quality you've rejected in yourself, and that the deeper you go inward, the less you need to project outward. This is how you begin to heal, not by changing who you're drawn to, but by changing what you're unconscious of. When you integrate the anima and the animus, you stop needing someone else to complete you. You become whole within. And from that place, you connect not from need, but from overflow. You walk through life differently now. You see every encounter as a dance of energies, every synchronicity in love as a message, every attraction as a clue, not to possess the other, but to understand the self. And when someone new appears, when you feel that tug, that electricity, that strange sense of fate, you smile gently. You no longer ask, is this the one you ask? What part of me is coming alive through this? Because you know now that love is not about finding the missing piece. It's about seeing the piece you've forgotten in the eyes of another. And in that seeing, something sacred returns to you. You've spent so much of your life trying to make things happen, planning, predicting, controlling outcomes with a white-knuckled grip. You were taught that success comes from effort and safety from certainty. But deep down, something has always felt off, as if you were pushing against a current meant to carry you. And now, after all the striving, all the careful strategy, all the overthinking, something in you is tired, not in a defeated way, but in a surrendered one. You're beginning to understand that real power doesn't always come from force. Sometimes it comes from trust. Trust is a quiet rebellion in a world obsessed with control. It's not passivity, it's alignment. And once you lean into it, life starts unfolding with a rhythm that no amount of planning could have created. You recall moments when letting go brought you what grasping never could. That time, you stopped chasing, and what you needed came on its own. The door that opened after you gave up knocking. The offer that appeared when you finally stopped searching. That wasn't luck. That was synchronicity born of surrender. You ask yourself, what have I been trying too hard to control, and what might happen if I let it breathe? There's fear. Of course, fear that if you stop managing every detail, everything will fall apart. But perhaps what's really crumbling is the illusion that you were ever in full control to begin with. Carl Jung knew that the unconscious will find its way, whether we cooperate or not. And when you stop resisting your deeper path, life begins to feel less like a battle and more like a conversation. You no longer feel punished by circumstances you feel spoken to. This doesn't mean giving up. It means giving in to the deeper intelligence that guides your life, the one that brings you the right people at the wrong time, the wrong turns that lead to right places, the endings that turn out to be beginnings in disguise. You begin to live in a state of attunement, not passively waiting, but actively listening. You take aligned action, then let go of the outcome. You say yes when it feels right, and walk away when your body says no, even if your mind is still clinging. This way of being requires courage. It's not what you were taught, but it's what your soul has always known. You remember a moment, maybe recent, maybe long ago, when you took a leap without knowing how it would land. It felt reckless, but looking back, it was one of the most aligned choices you ever made. Why? Because it came from a place deeper than logic. It came from trust. And now, you're learning to live from that place more often. You begin to see the signs as subtle nods from the universe, a name repeating, a symbol appearing in your dreams, a stranger echoing your secret thought. These aren't accidents, they're affirmations. They're your soul's way of saying, yes, you're on the right path, keep going. But you have to be willing to follow, even when it doesn't make sense, to walk toward what calls you, even if others don't understand, to release the need to explain, justify, or prove. This is the rebellion of trust. It's radical, it's liberating, and it's deeply personal. You may not have all the answers, but you're no longer demanding them before you move. You're moving anyway, not recklessly, but reverently. You trust that if something doesn't unfold the way you expected, it's because something more aligned is waiting. And now, when faced with uncertainty, you don't freeze, you breathe, you listen, and you ask, where is life guiding me now? The signs won't always be loud. Sometimes they're barely whispers, but now you know how to hear them. So you step forward not because you're certain, but because you trust. And in doing so, you stop chasing the life you thought you needed and begin living the one that's been waiting for you all along. There comes a moment when you stop looking outside yourself for answers, not because the world has gone silent, but because you finally remembered where the voice has always been, within you, guiding you, whispering through the threads of what seemed like chaos. It's not that the signs have stopped, it's that you've become one. You used to wait for synchronicity like it was magic, a rare event, a miracle. But now you see that it was always responding to you, to your vibration, to your readiness, to the questions you didn't even know you were asking. Life hasn't been random, it's been responsive. And the more conscious you become, the more precise the mirror grows. You feel it in the way people respond differently now, in the way you no longer walk into the same pain with different faces, in the way old wounds show up one last time, not to break you, but to be blessed and released. This is no longer coincidence. This is coherence. Your inner world and your outer world are beginning to match. You no longer search for meaning in every detail, not frantically, not out of fear. You simply know it's there. You live with a quiet sense of attunement, a soft inner compass that doesn't need to be proven right. You've stopped looking for signs to give you permission and started becoming the permission itself. The great turning point was never outside you. It was the moment you chose to see differently, to make the decision that nothing is wasted, that every moment has purpose, that even your confusion was part of the unfolding, even your mistakes had wisdom in them. You reflect on the most unexpected moments of your life, the phone call you almost didn't answer, the place you almost didn't go, the feeling you almost ignored, These moments changed everything. They shifted timelines. They opened doorways. Not because you were controlling life, but because you were in conversation with it. And now, you ask different questions. Not what will happen, but what am I being shown? Not why me, but how can I meet this with presence? You don't just chase purpose, you embody it. You carry meaning into the spaces you enter. You become the mirror, the archetype, the catalyst for others. You no longer wait to be saved or chosen or validated. You've remembered who you are, a meaning maker, a conscious participant in your own unfolding, and in that remembrance, you step into your life with grace, not because it's easy, but because it's yours. Even the hardships feel different now, not because they hurt less, but because they make sense within a larger picture. You've traced the threads, you've seen the design, and you trust the artist, even if you can't yet see the full canvas. So when things don't go as planned, you don't crumble, you listen, you ask, you stay open, and sometimes you smile, because you know that the very detour you resist may be the miracle you need. That's what it means to live in synchronicity, not that life is always smooth, but that it's always speaking. And now, more than ever, you are ready to respond. So you ask yourself, once more, what would it mean to live as if everything is connected, as if your heartbreak and your healing were part of the same sentence, as if your silence and your song were one melody? You don't need an answer. You've become the space where the question blooms. And now, everything slows. The noise fades, the questions soften. The story unwinds not with urgency, but with peace. You sit here, listening not just with your ears, but with your entire being. And in this stillness, something ancient stirs, a knowing, a remembering, that nothing was ever truly random, that every step, even the backward ones, were part of your sacred choreography. Breathe with that. You've moved through so many moments that once made no sense. You've stood at the edge of clarity, unsure if the light would return. And still, you kept walking, even when your faith wavered, your soul remembered, and that remembering carried you here. Look at your life now, not as a sequence of events, but as a story of becoming, a dream your soul has been dreaming all along. All the synchronicities, all the near misses, all the perfect alignments, they were never coincidences. They were confirmations. You have always been guided, not by luck, but by love. Let that settle in your heart like warm light. Let it soothe the parts of you still afraid. You don't need to have it all figured out. You only need to keep listening, keep noticing, keep choosing the path that feels like truth. Because when you choose yourself, the world learns to love the real you. And when you live from wholeness, the universe has no choice but to mirror it back. The love you seek is already within you.